Alrighty, welcome back to Tailosive EV live on YouTube, ladies and gentlemen. So Rivian's had a couple of setbacks that I wanted to dive into today. Mainly probably one of their flagship features that a lot of people seem to be excited for. I think this was probably a good call for them to either delay it indefinitely or potentially scrap it because this feature... Oh, sorry. Let me get my face back there. There we go. This feature, I think, made a lot of headlines, and it was very technically impressive to watch, but I don't see it as being a super-duper practical feature because, for one, it does not work on city streets. That's probably just an expectation more people should have looking into this, is that it has to work on, like, some type of slippery material. You can see they've tried it a lot when they were recording this video even. But basically, when you have four motors in the R1T, it can spin in its place like that. And it does look like it's doing it pretty quickly and out of control, so I don't think it's as simple as a feature of like, oh, if I'm in a tight, confined space, I want to be able to quickly turn 90 degrees and I don't have time to, you know, do the whole K-turn, not the K-turn, but the three-point turn. So I don't see this being something you can do very carefully or very graciously, for that matter. So I wouldn't say Rivian's canceled, but yes, as Greg Swanson said, fun doesn't always mean practical. I'm sure it is fun. It does look like something I would definitely want to try if I had a Rivian for a day, if I could just hop in and spin around a couple times. But I think that this is one of those desperate attempts, in my opinion, to kind of showcase as like, this is why we need four motors, when we know from the EPA results that the Rivian is not particularly very efficient. I mean, for one, it's not very aerodynamic, and I'm sure there's some traction control benefits to having four motors and having each wheel be able to turn independently, and you can kind of adjust that depending on what type of terrain you're going over. But the biggest problem I see that most people bring up anytime we talk about the Rivian R1T is that it's far too expensive for the type of product it is. I don't see that many people bugged out by the design or the headlights. You know, some people are a little bothered by it. They're like, you know, it looks kind of tacky or it looks kind of weird. But overall, I like the design myself. While I don't find... let me pull up the website here so we can see exactly what we're talking about. But yeah, I think it's a fairly iconic design. I like the gear tunnel, where you can store stuff in between, like the cab and the bed. I think the headlights are cool. I think it gives it kind of an iconic, you know, separate look from probably what everyone else is doing. You know, the F-150s all look the same pretty much. It's just slight variations of the same iconic look. And the interior I love, by the way. I probably don't talk enough about that because they're doing a lot of things that I care about, which is a landscape-centered display. And can I get a better look at the interior? No, we only got exterior shots here. There's utility. But basically, they have okay, here you go. They have a display behind the steering wheel, which is cool. You know, Tesla has that on the Model S and X, but they scrap it for the sake of manufacturing efficiency on the 3 and Y. The Rivian R1T and R1S keep that display, so if people are used to having information behind the dash, that's where it is. But then this software looks very clean, very simple and minimal, and you can take full advantage of this display because your speed and your what is it? Park, reverse, neutral. All that information can be displayed on this screen. So I like the way they handle the interior. Like the seat design looks cool. I like the glass roof. Lots of different colors to choose from. I think it's a little logo heavy for me. Like maybe this is just on the pre-production units, but they slap their logo a little bit too often. Like, do we need the Rivian logo on every single side of the car, like multiple times on the inside too? They put it on like the dash and stuff. But overall, I like the design. The bigger problem people have with it is just it's like a Tacoma sized truck that technically even like the base trim starts around the same price as like a 500-mile Cybertruck. So obviously the Cybertruck has kind of ruined all other electric pickup trucks because the specifications just sound so amazing, and hopefully Tesla is able to reach all of them. I'm struggling to imagine if Tesla is going to be able to retain the Cybertruck pricing, but all of that to bring back to the tank turn section, we need R1T and we need Rivian as a whole to be able to make more affordable vehicles. And of course, as we know in the EV space, the most expensive part of an electric vehicle is typically the battery. Not typically, pretty much always. And when you have a very inefficient design aerodynamically, like the Rivian, and when you have a lot of weight and you're carrying around a lot of stuff, you need very, very large battery packs. I think after this last EPA test, we've confirmed that the launch edition version of the Rivian R1T is shipping with like a 150 kilowatt hour battery. So vastly larger battery than even the Model S, which is at, $90,000, and this is supposed to start at $70,000, around that ballpark, depending on which trim you get. But I think people, they like the prototype. They like the prototype design. People like the product Rivian has put forward. It's just the price is far too high for, it's a 4-foot bed. It's not a particularly large truck, and large trucks sell better, and the towing capacity is far lower than that of the Cybertruck, and the payload capacity as well. So Aussie Pete says delivery models commenced with teething panel alignment problems. Yeah, exactly. So that's something I think everybody has to go through at the younger stages. Someone on the video I just dropped brought up, I think, a pretty decent point about that, which is a lot of people don't really complain much about quality control or panel gaps on tons of other cars that we see mass produced, especially from Toyota. It's a fairly common problem, but we're not accustomed to seeing that type of quality control issues with vehicles that cost as much as Teslas do or Rivians do. And that's because we're used to vehicles costing that much, not just being, tech-oriented vehicles. But if a vehicle is charging $50,000 or $60,000 or $70,000, we see it as more luxury-focused. This is a high-priced vehicle, so it should have high attention to detail. But the truth is, these companies that are starting up, their vehicles are priced similarly to luxury cars, but I think Brian from I1 Tesla mentioned this in one of his videos. They're not really high-end vehicles. I mean, they're priced similarly to luxury vehicles, but all of that money isn't going towards luxury and quality control and fine details. That money is all going towards the battery. It's going towards the technology and the equipment used for fast charging and holding a charge and getting long range out of an EV. That's where all your money's going. So the interior and the exterior and the panels and the paint and all that kind of like fine detail stuff, that is all entry-level stuff. It's not something they're going crazy with. It's not something that they're putting a ton of luxury emphasis on. It's just like, cover the basics. Can it get the job done? Okay, cool. The rest of the money is all going towards maintaining the battery. Any stone under any wheel, you are in big trouble. Yeah, I guess if you tried to do the tank turn with some rocks underneath you, that would probably not be good for the outside. Let's see. The Rivian is really nice, cross between modern and new and standard pickup design. Yeah, and that comes with some pros and cons. I think that the R1T probably looks far more approachable to the traditional pickup truck buyer. Even if the Cybertruck is very practical and has great range and great affordability and great durability and all this utility, bigger bed, longer range, faster 0 to 60, higher payload capacity. Cybertruck can win in so many situations, and yet there's a ton of people out there that simply will not buy it because they don't want to be driven around in something that looks like that. There's still a ton of people like myself that are comfortable driving a weird looking vehicle that's very different, and that of course there's huge demand for the Cybertruck, and there's a lot of Tesla fans that have fallen in love with the design. I definitely have, and it's very iconic to me, but there's still a huge market of pickup truck owners that are like, everywhere I park that thing, people are going to ask me what I'm driving and why I picked that. So anyone who drives a Cybertruck practically has to become a Cybertruck advertisement. Everywhere you go, people are going to be like, what is that? What are you driving? Why did you buy that. Like, why would you buy such a bizarre looking vehicle? And you're going to have to explain, well, it's because it's durable, it's because it's better at this and it's better at that. And everyone's like, okay, yeah, but it's weird. So status is a thing, you know, colors and design of the vehicle, while it may not be super practical, it's still something that impacts a lot of people's perception. It kind of says a bit about the type of person you are if you're driving a particular vehicle. There's, you know, a reason that someone would pay probably a ton of money for a truck that kind of fits their character and their personality, even if they could probably shave $5,000 or $10,000 off the pickup if it was like bright pink. You could imagine a ton of pickup truck buyers would be like, no, I'm not driving that. It's like, what? But it's cheaper and it has the same utility. It's like, yeah, but that's a bright pink pickup truck. I don't want to be driving that. So it's like style to a certain extent matters. But the more traditional pickup truck design of the Rivian results in it being far less aerodynamic, and that does not help with efficiency, and that results in you having to pack around more batteries wherever you go, which drives up the price. So it's like this long chain of events that results in basically the price being worse overall and the specs being worse, because, you know, the bigger the batteries you got to put in there, the lower your total payload capacity can be. Lower the towing capacity is as well. Peterman says, are you still full-time on YouTube? Yes. How's it going? And would you have any tips for me as a starter? I don't have many tips other than just start making stuff. Make stuff you're interested in. Make stuff you enjoy talking about, because it took me, I think, 7 or 8 years of uploading videos to YouTube before I was actually able to make it my full-time job. So it's not something that just one day, my video exploded and now I'm doing great. It's like, it's a very slow, lots of learning, lots of failure, and lots of figuring out what doesn't work and what does work, and trial and error, you know, to like just start uploading stuff, start making stuff, and then look at the creators that you like and figure out what are they doing that I'm not doing. And don't directly copy them, but just look at qualities of like, okay, what about this video do I like? Is it the editing style? Is it the lighting? Is it the sound? What makes a video more enjoyable, and what's working and what's being successful for others? And that's going to take a long time. Trial and error of making videos and having them not do well, and having a video you put a lot of time and a lot of effort in and you post it, no one likes it or no one watches it. That's going to be a lot of practice and a lot of things you're going to teach yourself over time. So what I've found is that with all of that failure and with all that trial and error, it's a lot more helpful if you enjoy it. If you're not enjoying the subjects you're talking about, or if you're not enjoying the process, you're going to have a very miserable time, because it's going to take years for you to get to the point. Well, unless you just get lucky, it could happen much shorter. I'm not saying it has to take years, but it's a very competitive space, as I've discovered myself. You know, a lot of people have harder time. A lot of people have had more success than I have in a shorter amount of time by doing different things, but oftentimes the things they do differently are not things I would enjoy or not things I would take much pride in. So, yeah, just start getting through stuff. There's basically going to be like 1,000 bad videos you're going to make, and there's no way around it. So the sooner you get through that 1,000 videos, the better. Let's see. Assuming the Cybertruck is in vaporware at the current pricing and specs, yeah. Well, Tesla's pretty good at hitting their specs. Pricing's a little bit different, but I think that the Cybertruck, even if it was $10,000 more than their advertised pricing, it would still be the highest in demand. Pretty much everyone wants that thing. Hey, the top dog is in the chat. Thanks for joining us. He can't wait to hear them on the open roads regardless. Yeah, I want to see a Rivian. I've had my friends spot them around the Bay Area, and I haven't been able to spot one yet, but I'm definitely looking. I want to test drive one. I want to sit inside one. I think they look great. Belint Turi says, I'm curious where the Cybertruck will sit in terms of luxury, from having 3/Y on the low end and S and X on the high end. For example, ventilated seats in R1T are awesome. Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily ventilated seats that cost a ton of money. It's just the Rivian design and weight allows for not that great aerodynamics or energy efficiency, and the 4 motors is probably not helping with that. So I'm hoping that If Rivian doesn't see the tank turn feature as that crucial or very useful, they could work on at least a dual motor R1T that's maybe lighter. That way you could go further on the same size battery pack or go the same distance with a smaller battery pack, because that could help lower the price a lot. Less parts, less complexities would make the pickup truck more obtainable. And when they're pricing their vehicles that high, I think they just might as well throw in some luxury features like ventilated seats. I don't think that the Cybertruck will have any, because all of the money you're paying for mostly with the Cybertruck, I think, is going towards the battery, because the biggest thing the Cybertruck has going for it is the amazing range for the price. And that's going to be achieved through the exoskeleton, saving on weight by not having a body-on-frame design. So now the exterior of your vehicle serves multiple purposes. Not only does it serve the purpose of protecting the vehicle and being the, exterior, the outside, but it's also holding the vehicle together. That's where all of the structure and the mass is. And then the structural battery pack will also be serving dual functionality. So that's how you're able to achieve the great towing capacity, payload capacity, the high range, is because you won't need as crazy many batteries as the Rivian does, because those batteries are serving multiple functions. And I think trying to get the price point as close as possible to what Tesla promised is going to be the trickiest part. So I don't think there's going to be ventilated seats or that many luxury features. Like, there's no display behind the dash. They're trying to keep everything as simple and as minimal as possible, which is a design choice that Tesla's made with a lot of their vehicles, is making things simple, making things really basic and minimal. And a lot of people, I think, misunderstand that as, this is just a style. Tesla likes to have very blank, very neutral interiors. Like, holy crap, have you seen the Cybertruck interior? It's so basic. There's like as little as you can possibly imagine to a vehicle interior. But I personally think that's great. Some people really prefer that, honestly, and I'm one of them. Some people enjoy the simplicity of a particular design, and they minimalism is kind of in right now. A lot of people dig this look, and a lot of people don't, which is fair. I wouldn't harp on anyone for not liking this. It's just a personal preference. But I think what Tesla is doing that is smart is that they are choosing the subjective choice, of we want to be minimal, we want to be clean, we want to be basic, over the Rivian choice of being a tad more stylized and a bit more intricate with their vehicles and their interiors. But one of these things will allow for simplified manufacturing, which means lower operating costs. You can build them faster. If there's less components, if there's less parts overall, then there's less suppliers you're waiting for, right? Because you can only build your vehicle as fast as the slowest part. So that's why Tesla's mindset is have as little parts as possible. That way you're not relying on other people to provide for your vehicle. So when Tesla goes minimal, when they go basic with their designs, that's how they're able to achieve range in specs and price points that no one else can beat. And that's still pretty much the scenario today. So it's smart. Just realize that when you choose the alternative, if I want a more stylized interior, I want more complex design, I want more traditional look, it comes at the cost. You end up paying extra for that. The Top Dog said, unintended Tesla internship. Yeah, pretty much anyone who buys a Tesla, even already with the Model 3 and Y and stuff, if you show up to family events with that, or if you show up to your job interview or something, you show up to your work with that, people are going to ask you about it. Be like, so why did you get that? Like, I've heard such and such about Teslas. Why would you get that? And then you get to say, no, that's not true. Or yeah, that's only true with these models, but not the Tesla, or the supercharging is actually really easy. That kind of thing. AGJ says Rivian has a long way to go to catch up to Tesla self-driving. I wonder if Rivian will be giving driving data to Amazon. Yeah, I don't see as much effort on Rivian's part to really jump heads in. I know that Amazon also owns Zoox, which is also specializing in self-driving tech. So they might be able to cross-collaborate a little bit there. Like maybe some of Zoox software will find its way into Rivian's. But I agree. The amount of data Tesla is able to collect on the FSD system and the way they've structured it, I think, is really genius as well. I'm not trying to say this as a criticism, but it may come across that way to some people. But Tesla found a way to get their beta users to pay them. instead of what Waymo or Rivian is going to have to do, which is basically pay their own employees to try to test their software, or Zoox to like paying people to drive around the vehicle and intervene when necessary to try to train their algorithms and to train where their system is flawed. Instead, Tesla is actually making money off of developing the software, which from a business perspective is genius because you'll have way more data collected if you're letting your customers actually be the beta testers, which some people disagree with. Some people say that's a bad idea. I think it's a good idea because I know that there's a lot of people that want to be beta testers. They want to try the software, even though they know very clearly it's not ready. Oh, hey, Tyler Forte just became a YouTube member. Thank you very much. He supercharged the channel. For those who don't know, it's $2 a month. You get access to updates about my videos that I'm working on before I drop them, access to premium channels in the Discord, and this helps me out. It helps this be my full-time job, so I'm very grateful for all the EV channel members. Thank you. It should be the first link in the description. Yeah, second link, sorry. First link is a Tesla referral, but yeah. Second link in the description helps me out a bunch, but thank you, Tyler. Overall, the FSD beta, I do believe, just for the argument of scale, is further ahead than everyone else. I think that there's not enough people that take that into consideration. I've watched a lot of podcasts and videos where people say, no, Waymo is technically in the lead because they have a level 4 system, whereas Tesla's is level 2. I think that, you know, the level system can be abused. There's benefits to having it. I honestly think it might make more sense to call it the 5 levels of liability. Makes a tad more sense than the 5 levels of autonomy, because I think that the FSD beta can do way more and is far more capable than Waymo, but because of how the definitions of the autonomous driving levels work, FSD beta, even beta 10, even beta 10.1 are still technically level 2 because you have to pay attention and you have to keep your hands on the wheel. Even though, in my opinion, they're way better software. It's technically a level 2 system because you're liable, whereas Waymo's level 4 system technically allows you to jump on the vehicle. You don't control it at all. That you can't even reach the steering wheel if you wanted to. It's not like we need a human to take over in an emergency, although they do have employees shadow driving and driving behind the vehicles and taking over online and stuff. The customer who rents the taxi, they just sit and enjoy the road, and they're not liable, so that's why it's technically ahead. But the scale is far lower. And I think that scale absolutely is relevant, while a lot of people say it isn't. They're like, well, you know, I don't really care about where it works. Let's just talk about Waymo has level 4. Tesla doesn't. Okay, right. That's it. They don't want to talk more about that. It's like I could create a level 4 robotaxi if it just had to drive like 500 feet and back. You know, that's like a shuttle service at an airport. You know, if you just get in these shuttles and they drive you from one end to the airport, they drove you to the other. Okay, whether it's on a rail system or whether it has tires, done. Level 4. Is that actually ahead of Tesla, or is that ahead of a level 2 system that drives around on city streets, drives through roundabouts, stops at stop signs, goes through the monorail test like on Hyperchange, and can do all these crazy things and anticipate bikers coming closer to the crosswalk and stopping for people? I would say that's further ahead, even though it's technically level 2. So I'm not the kind of person that's like, let's throw out all the different levels of autonomy, but I do think they help kind of measure where we are liability-wise, but autonomy-wise, I don't agree. They're not a great way of measuring success. Let's see. I seriously expect the Tesla Cybertruck to have better specs with all the improvements. Yeah, I mean, Tesla has a good track record in the past of unveiling a certain range and a certain acceleration and then beating that when the actual product comes out. What they don't have a great track record with is pricing. Oftentimes they will unveil a product with a certain price, and then by the time it comes out, it's a much higher price, or not much higher, but you know, a bit higher. But I think the value is typically there. It's typically like, okay, the vehicle ends up costing $3,000 or $4,000 more than we thought, but the range is much better than we originally expected, and the acceleration is much better, and there's stuff included that wasn't included before. The most recent example I can think of is the Model Y. When they first unveiled that, they said that the standard range would be 39,000 and the long range all-wheel drive was going to be 51,000. And right now, they got rid of standard range, but when they had standard range, it started at 42,000, but the range was 14 miles further than originally promised. And when they first unveiled the Model Y, autopilot was not included. That was a $3,000 add-on. Now autopilot is included, and then before they took away standard range, it was actually $40,000. It was really cheap, and it still was technically $1,000 more than what they originally said, but the range was further, acceleration was better. Same thing with the long-range all-wheel drive, which is $3,000 more than what it was promised to be when they unveiled it in 2019, but the range is like substantially higher. When they first unveiled it, they said it would be like 280 miles of range. Now it's 326. So it's almost 50 miles further range than originally promised. Okay, $3,000 more, but autopilot's included as well. So, let's see. Hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicle feasibility. In my opinion, in a closed box scenario, hydrogen looks pretty cool, but the infrastructure is ridiculously expensive, so it's not practical. Fuel cell in Franken fuel tank instead of rollout kitchen. No. The biggest problem with hydrogen is not like making a fuel cell vehicle that can, drive a long range. That's one aspect of the future of just the future of zero emission vehicles or more efficient vehicles. Okay. Can it go far? Can it refuel or recharge fast? Those are part of the equation, but another part of the equation is how many places can you refuel or recharge, and what is the cost of refueling or recharging? And I think that people who are excited about fuel cells ignore that aspect of the equation far too much. You could probably build like 10 EV charge stations for the price of one hydrogen fuel station, because the cost of for one, that doesn't even take into the account the cost of transporting hydrogen in the state that it needs to be in to fuel a vehicle and refueling it and storing it, because it's a very lightweight gas, so you need to pressurize it or cool it to get it stored. Whereas charge stations basically just tap into the grid, which is everywhere. Practically means you can theoretically charge an EV anywhere there's a light bulb. So anywhere there's electricity. We already have an infrastructure that is somewhat ready, not completely. It's going to need to be beefed up a bit, and we're going to need more power plants to accommodate for the EVs that are coming. But the wiring and so forth is technically already there. As long as your garage has electricity, you can technically charge an EV. And yeah, there can be some electricians to come in and install a couple grand worth of equipment to make your EV charge faster, but it's still far, far, far cheaper than trying to build out a network of hydrogen stations or try to let people refuel their hydrogen vehicles from home. That's going to be ridiculous and far too expensive. Tank turns. Did you read the Motor Trend article on tank turns? Not the Motor Trend one, but yeah, I basically think it's a cool feature, but one that Rivian should consider. Well, it's already been delayed, which I think makes sense, but I think the lack of practicality around it is kind of Rivian's desperate attempt to show why they think four motors is important, where in reality I think they should be working more on like a dual motor option that's far lighter, that's far cheaper, and that would probably end up selling way better, even if it didn't have 300 miles of range. Like, I know Rivian's alluded to the idea that they're working on a cheaper R1T to come later, with a sub 300 mile range. I think it'd be a good idea for that option to be dual motor, so that it doesn't weigh as much, and that way the battery can be a lot smaller and you can save a lot of money on that. I don't think take turn was a practical value. The Hummer crab walk is more useful. Yeah, I would agree. Crab walk is probably more useful, but then of course the electric Hummer is insanely expensive and only going to be used by people who are like diehard Hummer fans, I feel like. I think it starts over 6 figures. So yeah, that's really not going to work. I mean, it'll exist. It's kind of the perfect GM move, because they can be like, see, we're in the electric pickup truck market, but it's like the lowest possible volume electric pickup truck you could have possibly made. It's like so low volume. And I just think it's a weird demographic to go after, because Hummer fans are not people who care about the environment. So to tell them like, hey, this one's low emissions, but I'm actually genuinely curious of what the EPA miles per gallon equivalent is going to be on the Hummer. I bet it's going to be worse than the Rivian, the Hummer is supposed to weigh over 9,000 pounds. So it's most likely, without a doubt, going to be the most inefficient electric vehicle ever made. But that's still better than any gas vehicle. Doesn't matter how efficient the gas vehicle is, because you get to skip so many steps by not using gasoline. You skip the process of pumping oil out of the ground, moving oil to a refinery, refining the oil, which there's a lot of emissions in every step of this process, and then transporting the refined gasoline and petroleum to gas stations, and then the energy it takes to move the gasoline from the station into your vehicle. And then a lot of that gas is still lost. Even on a highly efficient vehicle, a lot of that energy from the gasoline is lost to carbon monoxide, poisonous gases, heat. It's a combustion engine, so that's literally what it does. It combusts to get you to move. So, yeah, it's like even the most even the least efficient electric vehicle is still better for the planet. So, please don't fall into the assumption that if miles per gallon equivalent is lower than that of some gas vehicle, that makes it worse. Peterman says, thanks for the advice. I've started recently and agree that doing what's enjoyable is better than what's popular, which will make the process better. Really appreciate. Oh, thank you, Peterman. I hope that helps you. I mean, I sometimes still struggle to grow any of my channels, so I wouldn't completely rely on me for all advice, but I can just tell you what's worked for me because I have experience with that. Baron says, did you notice how Rivian offers a silver color? Tesla, take notes and bring silver back. Well, yeah, Rivian is in their startup phase right now. They offer, I'm sure, lots of colors, far more than Tesla does, but I can guarantee you Rivian is not profitable, which is, I think, far more important than color options. But yeah, I like the color options they offer. I think they got a very solid product on their hand. I like that one. Limestone, kind of the Stormtrooper Glacier White look. It's probably going to get very dirty, but it looks cool. But yeah, all of this complexity in manufacturing results in more bottlenecks in the factory. It takes longer for them to ramp up, and they have to wait longer for certain suppliers for every step of this process. So all I'm saying is Tesla doesn't have few options for no reason. I'm sure Tesla has really nothing against options, but there's a very specific reason they choose to make things very basic and very simple and try to streamline manufacturing. Let's see. I always thought tank turn would be a great way to crash or break CV joints. Yeah, I think so. I think that's probably a safe assumption. Yeah. Maybe Rivian will buy self-driving from China. They loaned lots of code from Tesla. I heard about that. It's interesting that Tesla is all about, like, open source patents and everyone can access this, but then there's still certain things Tesla doesn't want getting out. It's fair. They got certain contracts. I get it. But what will be the longest EV range, and what is the ideal range? Right now, I believe it's 405 miles on the long-range Model S. Nothing else that's been delivered and mass-produced has beaten that, at least according to the EPA. There's other companies that have said they are going to beat that, but they haven't delivered their vehicles yet, at least with the EPA standard. I'm sure there's higher range numbers with more generous range tests, like, who is it, WLTP or someone like that? Any NC or any DC. Yeah, there's other range calculators in other countries that are a bit more generous and not as specific as the EPA is, but technically I would have to imagine, if you're just talking longest EV range ever, let me think. I'm guessing the Tesla Semi without a trailer on the back would probably go pretty dang far whenever that's ready, because the plan with that Semi is that you'd be able to go about 500 miles, or Elon said over 500 miles, with a full payload. So like 80,000 pounds, and you can go 500 miles. So if you don't have a full payload and there's no trailer attached, which does happen from time to time, sometimes you got to drop a trailer off. Sometimes you're moving cargo from one place to the other and there's nothing to bring back. That happens depending on the use case of the semi-truck. You could technically, I don't know how far you could go, maybe close to 1,000 miles. I guess it wouldn't be very aerodynamic if you had this big Tesla Semi shape, but it just kind of all dropped off on the back. But yeah, EV extended range is kind of a difficult thing to calibrate for, because The bigger a battery you put in a vehicle, the more weight it's going to be, which means the more energy you need to move it. So it's not just this linear fashion of put more batteries in it, suddenly it goes further. It's like the more range you want, the more energy dense your batteries have to get, and the more batteries you're going to get to push it to 400 to 500 to 600. So I'm sure it's technically possible for Tesla to make a Model S that could go 500 miles, 600 miles, 700 miles if they just that was the sole purpose of the vehicle, was to just give it insanely long range. But because that's the most expensive part of the vehicle, that's going to drive the price up a ton, and it's not going to help with the efficiency much because the vehicle is just going to weigh more and more and more, which kind of eats into your range during lower speeds and that kind of thing. So, yeah, for ideal range, it has actually a lot more to do. I think this is another common misconception. I see in the EV space a lot, or at least not in the EV space exactly, but people that talk about EVs seem to think, maybe people that talk about EVs that don't have as much experience with them appear to think that EVs can only replace gas cars if they have equal range and they can recharge as fast as a gas car can be filled with gasoline. I personally don't believe that to be the case because EVs, for the vast majority of owners, can charge from home. It's a bit different for apartment livers because you might not have a way to charge your vehicle if you live in an apartment and that kind of thing in a major city. That I understand, but at least in the United States, the vast majority of people do live in a house with a garage of some kind, and there's no way to fill up your gas car from home. You know, unfortunately, I'm depressed by this, but I still do drive a gas car. Because I don't drive very much at all, so I'm spending most of my money on investments instead of a car. But it frustrates me that oftentimes when me and my wife need to go somewhere and we're prepping for a drive, we're like, oh, wait, before we go to this place, we have to stop at a gas station, even though we're at home, because there's no way to fill up our gas tank from home. We have to, basically, the range of gas cars is always measured in from the pump. It's, you know, my gas car, which costs less than the computer I'm live streaming on right now. I bought it way back in high school, and it's, you know, it covers the basics. It was like under $4,000. It was very cheap, but it goes 450 miles from the pump, not from my house. Whereas an EV, even if it was low range, even if I bought an EV with like 220 miles of range, I would find that more useful and practical because I could leave the house with a full charge every single time. Especially if it was lithium iron phosphate. I could leave with 100% every single time. Whereas my gas car, if I drive home and the gas tank is low and I didn't run that errand and go find the gas station to refill, I'm going to leave the house with 100 miles of range. Doesn't matter if the full tank is 400 because I'm going to have to go to the gas station. Whereas from home, it charges slower, but you can technically charge it overnight, and you don't need that expensive of a plug to charge it that fast. So charging speed, I think, plays a much bigger factor in road trips than the actual range. Like if you go to Tesla's trip planner, Go Anywhere section of their website, you can see that if you compare like a 300-mile Tesla to a 400-mile Tesla, the difference on like a 700-mile road trip is only like 30 minutes because it becomes more of a battle of how quickly can your battery be recharged and back on the road again, not so much how long can you go in between charges. It's just kind of people's dated look of road tripping is I get in the gas car, I drive it until it's low on gas, I fill it up until it's full, and then I keep driving until it's empty again. And batteries just simply, I don't think ever will work that way. I mean, there's talk of battery chemistry changing and getting better and certain batteries being better at charging speeds than others. But I think fundamentally with the way batteries behave, it's going to take a learning curve on a lot of car owners and a lot of road trippers. Like we're going to have to change the way we do things. And it's okay. It's not to make road tripping worse. It's to make it better. And it'll make it more convenient. But it's just going to take a little bit of mental rework to realize you drive until you charge until you can reach your next destination. It's not about charging until you hit 100%. It's about charging until can the car reach the next stop, because batteries fundamentally, I think, will always charge 0 to 50% or 60% much faster than they can charge from 60% to 100%, because those electrons need a place to go, and the higher that battery gets, the higher percentage that battery gets, the harder it's going to be to fill it to 100%. So it's just not practical to assume that one day we'll be able to get to 100% charge in 5 minutes. I know there's been theoretical batteries. I've seen the articles. I was like, this company is working on a battery that you can charge to 100% in this amount of time. And I'll believe it when it's mass producible, because there's all kinds of battery tech that's shown great promise in a lab, but it doesn't make it to the mainstream. I've heard about those batteries literally ever since middle school. But yeah, for those who are just joining, we started off the stream talking about Rivian's tank turn, but I'm doing these EV streams every Wednesday because I enjoy live streaming and seeing your guys' questions or things you guys are interested in talking about. But there's a thumbnail and a title that we start the stream with, and then you guys can change the subject. If you have different questions, different subjects you want addressed, you can just write it in the chat, and we're not required to just talk about tank turn for an hour. That's that's not the goal. I just start off the stream with one subject, and then you guys can control where it heads out. I'll just keep up with the chat. Mark Sequence says, being profitable is more important than color options? Maybe not. Sorry. Maybe colors are more important. They should just go bankrupt, but at least they would have had color options. Kurt says, Lucid got an official EPA range of 500 plus miles per charge. Then again, I don't think they have delivered any cars yet. Did they really? I want to see that. I was excited to hear EPA official numbers from Lucid, but I haven't seen the articles. I know that Lucid has been road testing their vehicles, but I haven't seen an official EPA report done on them. So I'm looking around for it, but yeah, I'm not saying you're lying. I'm just saying you might have misunderstood. There's been a few articles that are discussing how Lucid is expecting the EPA to give them a range of that amount, but that doesn't mean it's an official report. Baron says, I think Aptera would take the cake when it comes to the highest non-delivered yet but may actually happen claimed range. Yeah, you're right. As far as range that's been announced but not confirmed, correct. The Aptera technically says they'll reach 1,000 miles on a charge. I am a big fan of Aptera. I want them to come out. I would definitely be super interested in getting one if they can stay true to their specs, but I personally don't think they're going to hit that. I think that the weight of a 100 kilowatt hour battery is going to increase the energy consumed per mile, and that's okay. I still think it'd be a great vehicle. If they're 30% wrong, that would be incredible. It would still be an amazing vehicle if their numbers were 30% off, which I would say is pretty off. That's a pretty big drop. Like, the energy consumption, I'm guessing, of the more heavy Aptera is going to be higher. So let's say the range instead of 1,000 miles is 700. That's still an EV under $50,000 that can go 700 miles on a charge. Like, that's amazing. That's incredible. I'm super duper impressed by that. And absolutely, I'd say it's worth the money. If you're the type of person that, mostly drives either by yourself or with one other person, you're not driving around the whole family. The Aptera is a specific portion of the EV market. I don't think the Aptera is taking many sales at least from Tesla or sedans or SUVs. It's more of a specific model for two-person vehicles. But having an EV that you could buy and recharge from the sun and go that far on a charge, that's incredible. Unfortunately, I think with Rivian eventually put their trucks out there, they're going to be full of problems. Oh, Rivian. Yeah, I think you could be right. It'll be interesting to see how the media portrays that, because I saw some people saying Rivian is going to be more involved with marketing and, have a more traditional automotive approach with a PR department and maybe even advertising campaigns. I haven't seen Rivian do much yet, but they might not be so Tesla-like in the way that they promote their vehicles and pay for reviews or pay for advertising in certain ways. So it'd be interesting to see if Rivian has similar problems to what Tesla has had and the media doesn't care as much. The media's like, well, it's Rivian. No one really cares. It's probably going to be fascinating if Tesla, because they are so well known and so many people have heard of the term Tesla and so many people know who Elon Musk is, that media companies just realize saying bad things about Tesla does miracles for our channels. It does great for our websites. We get so many more clicks when we say a bad thing about Tesla. If we say something bad about Rivian, not much happens. We don't get much attention for it. So we're going to just keep dwelling on Tesla. Even if Tesla's quality control is far better than Rivian's, their range is much better, their efficiency is much better, they've delivered far more products. They probably always will. At this point, with the scale Tesla is growing, I think that they will always have a higher production capacity than Rivian. I don't really see that changing. How many Rivian orders were made for Tank Turn? Yeah, that's a good question, too. I wouldn't say none. You'd be surprised. Some people will buy things for very random reasons. I've gotten into many arguments in the comment sections on this very channel of people that are like, I don't know. When the Lightning came out, I was just kind of shocked how many people were suddenly like, I don't care about my Cybertruck order anymore. I'm getting the Lightning. And I was like, why? Like, because the bed is smaller, because the range is lower, because the price is higher, because the... Like, what exactly did the Lightning offer? Because it's less durable, it's more fragile, the glass is worse, the paint will scratch, the frunk is cool. Is that the main reason? You just wanted a big frunk, so you're not getting the Cybertruck anymore? I don't know. I just... There's some people that will choose particular vehicles for very bizarre reasons I've discovered on the internet. It's also kind of mind-boggling, you know. A lot of people... I consider myself fairly reasonable. You know, I admit that I am biased towards Tesla. I have a preference, and I think it's ridiculous to act like there's people online that are objective. I mean, just like we all have favorite colors, I think we have favorite brands and favorite designs. And, excuse me, I've met people in my life, family members and friends, that are just diehard Ford fans, and they would never consider buying really anything other than Ford vehicles. And that's just the brand, that's just the reputation they've grown up with, and they don't want to stray from that. And there's people that defend Tesla to the day they die, and I've met a lot of people out there that say Tesla is basically going to be the only automaker in the future. They're just going to kill everyone off because no one's going to be able to compete with their manufacturing, their range, their features. So Tesla's just going to take over the world, and everyone in the future will buy Teslas. But just think about when you go out on public roads and you're driving around, how many different varieties of car there is. I mean, there's only one or two major brands. I get that, but there's just everything's a Ford, everything's a Toyota, everything's a GM. But the just insane diversity of the lineups that all these major brands offer, and the fact that people don't all buy cars based on which one is the cheapest, which one is the most efficient, which one is the most practical. No, there's a lot of like buying of just people buy with their soul or with their gut of like, I like the way that one looks a bit better, so I'm buying that one. Even if it's substantially more expensive, less efficient, unpractical. There's all kinds of reasons to not buy all kinds of vehicles that sell in extremely high volume, but they just click with certain people better. So I personally don't believe Tesla will just bankrupt all other... Well, a lot of companies will go bankrupt, but I don't think Tesla will be the only car company in the world. I think they will be the best. I personally think they're the best now, but that's very, subjective and opinionated. Excuse me. What do you think a Rivian share will cost when they go public? That's an interesting question. They probably want it to be fairly approachable to the everyday investor. That's how Tesla was at first, and that's how Lucid was at first, and Nikola and Canoo, and so yeah, I don't look too much into it. I'm not really particularly interested in investing in Rivian. I would rather invest in, a more promised EV maker. But I would guess somewhere in the ballpark of $10 to $40 a share. You don't want to start off really, really high because then you're not as obtainable. And, they kind of want to bank on, you want it to be approachable to younger investors, and younger investors obviously have less money to invest, so they're not going to be able to buy a share of Rivian if it starts out at $1,000 or $2,000. But if it's like $15, $30, they can, buy a couple shares and say, okay, I've invested in Rivian, and because they're young, they want to invest in more risky startups because they'll feel like they have more time to grow. So lower stock price makes sense. Let's see. Do you believe the U.S. government would let GM die if they won't come with great EV cars in the future, or will U.S. give them loans forever? I won't say forever, but I don't believe the U.S. government would let GM die. No, especially with how the government's trying to design the EV tax credit to like heavily benefit literally everyone except Tesla, which I found funny. I've kind of been interested in talking about that subject, but it gets a little political, and I don't like dealing with politics on the internet because I just don't feel like it's a great platform for it. I actually do enjoy talking about politics. I just think it's more fun to talk about one-on-one with people, because if you go on the internet, people are far more confident being mean and saying exactly what they're thinking, and when they have the protection of a keyboard, when you don't have to look someone in the face, you'll say a lot more than you would if you were physically in front of someone. And all of the political discussions I've had with people in person, I've had a lot of fun, because it's just, I think there is something beneficial to like the exchange of ideas and kind of discussing like, okay, how should this work? How should this work? And I disagree because of this. I think it can be done productively. I've just never found a productive way to do it on the internet. Whenever I talk to someone online, they're very set in their ways, or they won't accept any foreign idea, and they don't care how you react to their ideas. So it gets more distorted, and I don't think the conversation is productive, but it gets into the union talks and all that, and people are like, well, the government wants to protect unions, and Tesla doesn't have unions, so they're not willing to help them. But the main reason I haven't made a video about it is because I feel like it doesn't really matter, I think, as much as people make it out to be. Like maybe there's just less news going on in the EV space right now, so there's not as much to talk about. But I personally think the EV tax credit does not impact the future of electric vehicles very much. I think that people have this massive misconception that if we get the right EV tax credit, suddenly all of your dream electric vehicles are suddenly going to be $10,000 cheaper, and that's just not what's going to happen. The biggest issue with EVs is that companies cannot build enough of them, particularly Tesla, and their battery supply constrained, and of course right now their chip supply constrained. There's still a chip shortage impacting all of them. So even if tomorrow, magically, the government suddenly passed a law in record time and decided that there would be a $10,000 point of sale tax credit on all electric vehicles, doesn't matter if you have a union or not, just everybody gets $10,000 off, guess what would happen? All the EV prices would shoot up $10,000 or close to $10,000, to the point that, okay, the vehicle costs more, but to the consumer it costs the same. So it's basically just a way for the government to directly fund a bunch of EV makers and give them a pat on the back for making an electric vehicle. And as the government is setting it up right now to be not very helpful for Tesla, but very helpful for everybody else, it's going to result in all the non-Tesla EV makers making less efficient, more expensive EVs that they couldn't sell profitably if it weren't for the credit, but they are able to sell profitably because there's a $10,000 discount on all of them that the consumer doesn't have to put up with, but the EV maker themselves gets to benefit from. It's like, okay, wouldn't this be a lot simpler if you just started handing out money to everyone? I mean, like, why does this... How much money are you trying to give to GM for making EVs? Why don't you just cut the check now instead of trying to complicate the whole lineups, and now we got to do math of it actually costs this much, but after the tax credit costs this much. It's like, I don't know. I'm kind of like in the belief that the government mostly does things poorly, just in the experience I've seen, like whether it's military, the post office, the DMV, healthcare. You know, the government is just not good at doing most things. At least my government is. I'm not speaking for all governments, but so I'm kind of in favor of, like, let's get them doing as little as possible. So instead of a EV tax credit, I would be fine with, how about EVs under a certain price just don't have sales tax? We just eliminate the sales tax. If you're trying to add like $6,000, $7,000, or $10,000 off to each of these EVs, why don't we just not have sales tax if the EV is under a certain price? Obviously, you know, you can have sales tax if the EV is like $100,000. The people who are buying six-figure vehicles, I don't think we need tax breaks for those vehicles. Sure, take a big tax on that, but I'm all for, like, what results in the government having to do less involvement, less tax collected, less credits. Let's have them do as little as possible. You know, let's just get rid of sales tax on EVs because that's the government supporting them and saying, hey, you don't have to deal with sales tax because you're buying a vehicle that's good for the environment, and we want to support that. I don't know, but end of the day, the bigger problem is not the price of EVs to customers being needs to be artificially lowered. I think it should be actually lowered. I do agree it would help accelerate sustainable energy if we could build electric vehicles for cheaper, but we need them to be actually cheaper to build, not cheaper because the government gives you a tax credit. That doesn't make them actually cheaper to build. So what would make far more sense in my mind is if the government was encouraging and rewarding companies that are willing to build battery factories or any part that is crucial to EV development, give them some tax breaks, give the businesses tax cuts, and say, hey, we will reward your company if you help build batteries for EVs faster, because that's what we're limited at right now. Finding ethical and clean ways of mining the materials that are needed for batteries and how to recycle them and how to use them and ramp up battery production. That way the EVs are actually cheaper, not just fake cheaper. Let's see. What you just described is known in economics as tax incidence. In this case, the tax credit accrues to the seller because supply is inelastic. Okay, fair enough. I think accrues to the seller. Yeah, it's basically helping non-Tesla brands not go bankrupt. That's essentially what the government's trying to do. Environmental Canadian says, when do you think GM will be able to replace the 60 kilowatt-hour battery in my Chevy Bolt? I hope it is before my Cybertruck reservation. I'm approximately number 50,000 on the list. Thanks, Calvin. Well, thanks for your question, Calvin. Because I don't work for GM, I have no clue. Hopefully soon, but I know this is the most expensive recall in history, so there's probably a ton of Bolts that are getting their battery replaced as we speak, or worked on at least. But the good news is the Cybertruck is pretty dang delayed, so I have to imagine, yes, you'll probably get your battery replaced before the Cybertruck is ready, because Cybertruck's not going to be ready for a while. I've got some bad feelings about it, just in regard to the 4680 ramp is taking longer than they thought, and I know that because of the size of the Cybertruck, it's going to require a ton of 4680 batteries, so it's going to be a while. I think the first deliveries are looking more and more like best case scenario, end of next year, possibly not even till beginning of next year, because, end of year is usually when production is ramping really, really hard. So it probably doesn't make sense for them to get the Cybertruck delivered by the end of 2022, because they're going to be so focused on ramping Model Y with 4680s. Hopefully by that time they're ready. And then Cybertruck, you would probably want to start mass production of once demand has cooled down a little bit, and the market is buying less vehicles overall, which would likely be in the first or second quarter. So I would imagine maybe early 2023. That's when the first Cybertruck deliveries begin. And you're in Canada, so you're gonna have to wait even longer. So I think it could easily be 2024, 2025 until someone in Canada gets their Cybertruck order. I hope I'm wrong, though. I'm just trying to keep expectations realistic. Government has to pander to automakers to stop making gas cars because government knows that EV cars last a lot longer. Well, I wouldn't say the government knows much, so I won't give them credit for that. But I will say they know. The government has to be well aware that Tesla is dominating the EV space. They have to acknowledge that. Like 80% of electric vehicles in the U.S. are Tesla, and they probably are aware that the government. They're probably aware that legacy automakers depend a lot on maintenance and parts that EVs don't rely on. So finding a way to transition all of these jobs and all of these factories that have been optimized and built just for the internal combustion engine, trying to switch all of these guys over to a completely new vehicle design and new vehicle, with batteries and electric powertrains. There's going to be a lot of factories that become useless quickly, and a lot of jobs potentially that become useless. So the government's just trying to help them out as much as possible, I guess. But it's just kind of hypocritical to be like, oh, we're doing this for America, but Tesla's the most American EV maker, and yet they don't want to help them. They're just like, no, we don't want to give Tesla that much of a tax break. We don't want to help them out. which that doesn't upset me very much, to be honest. Like it's annoying and it's frustrating to not have government support for Tesla, but I don't think they need it. Like I think Tesla will do fine without any tax credit ever. You could get rid of the California rebate. You could get rid of the federal tax breaks, state tax breaks. You could get rid of all that, and I still think Tesla would be backordered. They can't build vehicles fast enough. So, end of the day, that's the big issue. Leo82 says, in Finland, EV got car tax during sale removed, but yearly tax, vehicle tax, got bumped up in compensation. Made Tesla Model 3 standard range 1,900 euros cheaper. Well, that's nice. See, I appreciate that move. I understand the registration getting up in price because there's a lot of taxes that are collected in gas right now. So if you buy an EV, you don't pay those taxes, so they bump up the registration cost, which is annoying, but I get it. You know, they have certain boundaries they got to reach. If Tesla restricts their supercharger network to only Teslas, then is that anti-competitive? I don't think it's anti-competitive. I think a lot of people are quick to throw that term around. First of all, we should acknowledge that Tesla has announced they are opening up the supercharger network to third parties. That is the current plan. And according to a leaked Elon Musk board meeting, the plan is to start in Europe next month. So it shouldn't even be very long before you can supercharge at non-Teslas at superchargers. But what's anti-competitive is when you try to directly discourage other EV companies from succeeding. I'm trying to think of a good example. I don't think, but no, the main answer to your question, like, does making a charger network for your customers that works better because it's all seamless and integrated and you just plug in the car and it starts charging and it does all the billing for you, is that anti-competitive to provide an option for your customers to drive their vehicle across the country? No, I don't think that is. Trying to think. I can't think of a good example. What would be anti-competitive is if, like, you let third-party EVs charge there, but you charge them like way more, like 10 times the price, or did something to their battery that made the battery age. But I don't know. I just don't think that should be looked at as anti-competitive. It's like Tesla was trying to make a standard back when the Model S was first being mass-produced, and the United States did not agree on an EV standard yet. So there wasn't one. So Tesla was like, okay, if there's not a standard and there's not enough charge stations, then we're going to make our own, and we're going to build them faster than anyone. So I don't see that as anti-competitive. It was just like, we used our own connector because there wasn't an agreed upon standard, and we wanted a connector that could do very, very fast charge rates, and nothing else on the market could really compete with it. And I still kind of believe that. You know, in Europe and Asia, they use CCS, but it looks a lot more clunky. It's a lot bigger. It's a lot bulkier to plug in an EV with the CCS connector. And Tesla's is just so thin and narrow, and it's like a lot easier to hold and plug into the car. And yet it's still technically supposed to allow for like 300 up to 350 kilowatts for a connector that's been in use for almost 10 years. Like, that's incredible. So I'm glad they went with their own standard. It's just going to be, it's just would have been better if the U.S. had agreed upon one earlier. Yeah, the EU did they made a much greater decision with the universal charger. In America, one day you will have 10 stations, one for each brand. Well, it's not that bad. I mean, there's basically two. There's the Tesla connector, and then there's CCS. And Tesla's plan is to bring adapters to all of their superchargers. Might take a while, or they're going to sell an adapter. They haven't decided yet. But Tesla's vision was not that only Teslas will charge at superchargers. The goal is still that any EV will be able to charge at any charger. Currently, any Tesla can charge at any charger as long as you have the adapter. But yeah, the process of having to find an adapter and get a connector for a different station, I get it. It's annoying, it's frustrating, but there's not an easy fix. You can't just start switching to CCS on every Tesla that comes out of Fremont, because all of those vehicles would not be compatible with all of the superchargers that Tesla has been deploying across the country. So It's the U.S. government's fault, basically. Tesla did the best they could with what they had, and the government, because they didn't agree on a standard, they're to blame. Let's see. It's not anti-competitive, it's jealousy. Yeah, I like that. It's like Apple saying they won't fix other non-Apple phones at their Apple store. Yeah, you're right. I was trying to avoid going to the smartphone analogy, but yeah. I was like, that's the easy one. Anti-competitive is charging different prices based on vehicle owned, not Tesla making their own network when the other option is to charge at home. Yeah, I agree. The reason I don't care as much about like, the connectors are different. It's so frustrating. It's not like a gas station is like 80% of charging is done in the garage, not at the charge station. So as long as you have the connector for your car, which your car will come with at your house, it's not that big a deal. It's just on road trips you would have to deal with the adapters. But yeah, Tesla's still deploying more chargers than anybody. So that's why Tesla sells so well. It explains a lot. The company that makes the best range, with the best efficiency, with the biggest network, with the fastest charging, they sell the best. Crazy, right? It's funny how it works that way. There have been Mercedes GLC hybrids charging in supercharger stations recently. Oh, wait, what country is that in? I haven't seen that. I just know that they want to do it through the app. I hope it's a separate app, though. I don't think it makes sense. I don't think it really makes that much sense to put it within like the Tesla app that owners download to maintain their car. It should just be a separate app called Supercharging, and it lets you sign up and put in your billing info, and then tell the app what supercharger you're at, what stall you're at, and how long to charge for, and what type of vehicle you have. I think vehicle to house and vehicle to vehicle is a huge differentiator. Do you think Tesla will add that to their vehicles? I don't know exactly if that's what you meant, David Lee. Is that what V2V is? Vehicle to vehicle? It sounds kind of cool, but my guess is Tesla would rather the range and the charging network be so good that you don't need to go out and charge another vehicle when it's low with a vehicle with a bigger battery, because that just results in the vehicle with the long range getting lower range. And there's like, no, the solution is to just not run out of juice. Don't let your vehicle run out of energy. Vehicle to home, I think Tesla has expressed some of their, in the past, they've expressed some of their impracticality with it, of like, you can power your home from your car for a little while, but then your car is going to have lower range, and you're not really going to have a great way to charge it if the grid is out. So they just didn't see it as super useful. They didn't see a ton of use cases for it. It would probably be good for small power outages. I'm not saying it's useless. Like if you were in a place where the power was consistently dropping out for 30 minutes to an hour every couple of days, then letting your house fall back on the car for energy for those brief cutouts would be fine. But if the grid was knocked out for like 10, 12 hours or more, and your car was the battery in your car was powering the whole house, it would just kind of dwindle your range, and before you know it, your car's dead. But hey, your AC was running, so I don't know. It's kind of like fixing one problem and creating another. So Mercedes did that in Finland. Maybe they got a little head start. I think it's part of some premium package with MB Road. Yeah, I haven't seen that anywhere. I would have thought articles would have been written about that by now. Imagine a power outage because of a hurricane overnight, and then your car is dead. Exactly. Yeah, that's a good Mark Andre Gray. That's a very good example as to why vehicle to grid might not be such a great idea. Powerwalls make a lot of sense. I hope they can ramp up Powerwall production, because building a battery into your home would make a lot more logistical sense in my view. So hopefully they can get that working. But vehicle to grid sounded cool on paper, but I think it's not useful enough, because power backups on an unstable grid probably is catering towards a demographic of people that are used to power going out for extended periods of time, not just brief cutouts. But, they could think of something, I guess. It's some kind of overlap. I just have a feeling that if Tesla hasn't done it yet, even though they're selling solar packages and power walls, they're delivering those to customers, then why not do the vehicle to grid by now? Like, probably because it's not as useful as they think. If a hurricane hit your area, you'd probably not be going anywhere with roads blocked. Well, some people will. Some people like to leave the area, but still, you're kind of in a pickle if you get hit by a hurricane and you're like, okay, the roads are blocked, I can't go anywhere. So I guess it makes sense in that kind of emergency situation, but it just requires some additional equipment. Like, it's not as simple as flipping a switch within the car. You need to have a inverter box installed. So if you already have power walls, you can use that at that point. And then when maybe the power walls go out, letting you fall back on the car. I'm sure there's some kind of use case for it, but it's likely just not a super common one. But yeah, I wouldn't be mad if they added it. I'll just say that. I think the usefulness of it is questionable, but it would not hurt anything to have that as a feature. That's fine. If they found a way to do it and it could work well, then great. But I appreciate all the questions, guys. I've got to get going here, but I hope you guys enjoy the videos coming soon. Of course, let me know either on Twitter or in the comments what subjects or what videos you want me to make in the future, because I'm happy to do these live streams. I know the longer form content, not everyone has time for, but I still enjoy it quite a bit because I get to figure out exactly what you guys are interested in and engage with you in real time. This was all live streamed over Starlink, by the way. It seems to be pretty stable today, which is nice. Thank you, Dishy McFlatface. And you can listen to these live streams after the fact in audio form on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Just got to look up Tailosive EV Streams, and you can find these there. So thank you all for watching. Hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.